Test, 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 test.
There you go. Throughout the game. Yeah.
All right. Can everyone hear Audi? Audi is, it's always difficult to get a mic on me and Audi at the same time because our natural volumes are wildly different.
I'm very soft spoken.
Yes. Which is.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
I can't hear you though.
What is wrong with the setup here? Why does every audience member not have a microphone? You know, that is perhaps one of the video challenges that we have had to solve many times is, you know, we've done streams together, and I'm always going to sound echoey because I have to turn Audi's microphone way up, and so I pick up on his microphone more clearly than I pick up on the microphone right next to me, so I always sound really bad.
Is this a roast or something?
No. I mean, I'm roasting myself for being so loud that I pick up on other people's mics more so than my own.
So I'm Audi Sorlie. By day, I'm a producer in video games, working for limited run games. Please don't move. But by night, people, I eat chicken, I cry myself to sleep. And I work for Digital Foundry.
We are very full of chicken. So there's a place that serves Taiwanese street food that is apparently like, it looks like a giant schnitzel that like fits in a medium-sized pizza box. It is literally a pizza box. It says pizza on it. Oh, not that I can put on a projector, but no, it's amazing. You all should look at it. What was it? Taiwan Night Market? Is that who had the giant piece of chicken? Get the spicy mayo with it. It's amazing. Look it up. You'll find pictures if you Google it. But anyway, I am Marc Try4ce Duddleson. I do a YouTube channel called My Life in Gaming with my friend Corey, who is not here this year. This is the first time. This is, I think, the fifth time I've been to Retro World. First time Corey could not make it. So anyway, yeah. So anyway, I mean, you know, we do a lot of YouTube stuff. We kind of are known for kind of having a sort of, I guess, a technical approach to our production, and you have associations with Digital Foundry that also obviously is a bit technical. So we have, you know, kind of some experience in, I guess, problem solving, just kind of sorting out like how do we present this way, or how do we find out or verify this information.
You guys want to hear about that chicken rather than that.
Right?
I told everyone how you can
It
find
was
out.
as big as this table, I tell you.
It wasn't quite as big as
Stories
that. And don't expect it to be the full size of a medium-sized pizza box, because it doesn't like fit, like it's longer than it is wide. It's not perfectly round. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking about chicken. Please.
Yeah.
I like some chicken.
So, kind of just like, I mean, we're kind of just going to have a general discussion here, but to kind of kick things off, I thought I'd bring a few visual aids, because people like to hear me ramble on about, you know, video scaling and aspect ratios and stuff like that. But I thought this would kind of give you an example of some of the concerns that I have about how to best represent old games in a medium like YouTube. And, you know, something you need to keep in mind is that, you know, that YouTube video window there, it's scaled. Your browser is scaling it.
Man, you lost that guy before you even played the video.
I don't have any videos. So you don't know what the end users, how they're going to be viewing. You don't know if it's going to be inset within the YouTube browser like that. You don't know what their monitor resolution is. You don't know if they're watching on their phone. You don't know. So there's all kinds of things that aren't really going to convey. You can even see some things in the shot. Even though this is like a zoomed in shot with scan lines and stuff, you can sort of see there's some irregularities there just because of how it's scaled by the computer, the projector, the inset within this window. So you kind of got to keep that in mind. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, like you got to play on a CRT or something like that. It's the only true way, but you can't easily present stuff with scan lines and stuff like that on YouTube or through other mediums, because that's just not how people are watching it. So you've got to kind of make some compromises between like, what was this stuff like, and how can I best present it now? So like here's an example. We're using, you know, this is actually the Mister right here. There's a few things to keep in mind. Right? So this is, you know, you can see where that that little like minimize thing is there in the corner. Obviously, this projector is not filling the full screen, but so you can kind of see where the boundaries of the actual screen are. But this is a 4x vertical scale. Obviously, it's kind of small. Within a 1080p space, it would be 8x within 4K. This would be where it is filling the screen with the actual useful game graphics. And then this is where you're doing a 5x scale where it does crop a little bit of it. You see that, between these two, you've lost a little bit of top, but who cares? Most CRTs would crop out stuff in the overscan. The graphics were designed in such a way generally to where important stuff wouldn't be cut off. So, if you want to like go bigger like that, I think that's totally fine. It's okay to make it much larger as long as you keep that correct aspect ratio. Now, with some systems, especially like arcade type stuff like Neo Geo here, you'll see like that credit is very close to the bottom. You can fill the screen with the useful game graphics, but if you go 5x, you've lost a little bit of that. So it doesn't work universally, but as a general rule, most systems originally designed for analog video output, regardless of whether you're actually using original systems or analog video or HDMI, you can scale them in different ways. But 5x usually works, but you got to keep in mind exceptions like this. Another thing I want to point out was aspect ratio. This is the original Sega Genesis aspect ratio. This is how it was designed for CRTs. Most, not all, but most Sega Genesis games are 320 pixels wide, which actually caused them to be squished in on a CRT. And you can see rings are taller than they are wide. The centers of the flowers are taller than they are wide, things like that. Generally, like Sega Genesis artwork and other systems that do 320 pixel wide graphics, it just seems like the artists didn't really take this into account. Sometimes they did. A lot of people think that Genesis games should be displayed like this, with square pixels, and that actually makes things round. Personally, I err on the side of, this is how everyone saw it back in the day. Everyone played this on a CRT, therefore, to me, this is the true aspect ratio. But I can see the argument for why you would want to use square pixels, because it kind of corrects it. And I think both are valid approaches, but I think you want to understand why you're making the decisions you're making about how to present your content or how to represent the game. If you decide, well, I see this as the true aspect ratio, or actually no, this is the true aspect ratio, I just think it makes sense to be informed about, how it's done. Similarly for NES, this is an NES game with square pixels. The square, the crates, the icons, everything is actually square. This is, therefore, NES games are 256 pixels wide, same with Super Nintendo, same with most PC Engine games. They're going to be stretched wider than square. But this is, to me, this is the true representation of NES game proportions, not that. But again, if you grew up with emulators, you probably saw those skinnier proportions. And, I think there's valid reasons to do that, but if you do that, I think you should do it for, a valid creative reason. Whereas I think, I just personally prefer to err on the side of CRT aspect ratios. A lot of people would say you should only play in composite. But what we've got here, we've got composite video through an upscaler. It's kind of blocky looking, which I think kind of goes against the nature of what composite video is trying to achieve. So we've kind of got two divergent paths. Do we lean into the back of the day look? Do we lean into the sharp pixel look? I think if you're going for the back of the day look, you want to do something more like this, where you've got a softened horizontal axis. So like this is actually recorded through the RetroTune 4K. This is with bilinear sharp filtering, and this is with bilinear soft filtering. So that kind of blends the colors together in a way that's a little more appropriate for what CRT, or what composite kind of tries to go for. So if you do want to represent NES games in this way, I think you should keep that in mind, in terms of, softer filtering. Don't try to get really sharp pixels with composite, because I kind of think it's an oxymoron. Here we've got the RGB. If you're going for the sharp pixels, go for the sharp pixels. See, here's RGB blurred, and I don't think softening it really gains you anything, but on the flip side does gain you something with composite. So, kind of lean into the look you're going for. Is it sharp pixels? Is it composite? And there's kind of different ways forward with that. Now, if you do want to do scan line type stuff on YouTube, here you've got, a full screenshot, we're not zoomed in at all. You add scan lines, it gets dark, you can kind of see a little bit of unevenness. You saw like kind of the color kind of changes to look a little weird. That's, again, because, the way those lines are being presented on a different device, you can expect that. Add like a mask effect, it's going to get even darker. So here we've actually zoomed in, and you can see what we're doing a little more clearly. So we add scan lines, that looks pretty cool, but you'll notice that it's still got that sharp horizontal interpolation. So you go here, I've added some soft horizontal interpolation. You can do things like this in both, RetroTink, Mister, various other emulators like RetroArch or whatever. You have these controls. So, just adding scan lines, in my opinion, doesn't really tangibly get you closer to a CRT look. Like, you don't put that on, you're like, ooh, that's like a CRT. You put that on, and that looks pretty close to what a PVM actually looks like, with those kind of softer edges to the highlights and stuff like that. So again, you want to take extra steps to get closer to the look you're going for. If this sharp pixels is the look you're going for, do that. But if you're going for like more of a CRT look, there's a few more steps, and you can go one step further. You've got, a CRT mask effect, but now it's like really dark. Now, something that you can actually do on the RetroTink 4K, and probably through some other tools as well, you have means of compensating that. So you've got the CRT scan lines, the mask effect, and you've brightened it back up. So, you kind of got to balance a lot of things like that. Here's not actually, this looks like it's scaled kind of funny on the projector here, so don't mind that. That's actually integer scaling, but it's not as off, the screenshot's not meant to be as off as it looks there. But we've got a sharp pixel look here. A lot of times, like a retro collection or something like that, well, not the one that you did on Rocket Knight, mind you. You did good on Rocket Knight. You listened to me and John. We're very proud. You'd go one step. A lot of retro collections or retro-inspired games will say like, "Ooh, here's the filter. This will make it look like an old TV." That does not look like an old TV. It's blurry, but that's not what an old TV does. A lot of people, when they're representing emulation, they will, just do that first step, or they're like, "Ooh, let's do a soft bilinear filter, vertical axis and horizontal axis." Rocket Knight Resparked does not do that. Thank you, Audi.
Please buy
So that's not, so I guess my point with this here is you want to lean further into it. You need to dress it up a little more. At least add scan lines. We've got a mask effect here. We've compensated brightness. HDR can help with that a ton if you've got the means to use it. But yeah, this is only a half step. This is not all the way. So you just keep in mind, there are more steps to take depending on the look you're going for. If you're going for this sharp pixel look, then go for that. If you're going for that, go for that. But just kind of understand what it is you're going for and why. And last two things here, just to keep in mind. In OBS, if you're recording in OBS or through something else where you have this ability to choose a video format, these things like NV12 and YUY2, those are compressed color formats. If you ever heard like the terms like 444, 420, and 422, they are sampling less colors and reconstructing it. And if you choose something that says RGB in it, you can know that it's not compromising on the color, which is important when you're getting into fine details like this, where you're replicating the CRT mask and stuff like that. It's not going to look right unless you do something like that. But then by the time you've recorded it, it's also going to have some issues because the recording format's probably going to be 422 or 420, 444 video files are really only for editing. You're not going to upload a 444 video to YouTube. So something like that XRGB, it's just kind of a production pipeline thing. You want to keep that full bandwidth of color all the way through as far as you can. But again, if you're doing full screen, you're going to lose some of that detail in the mask, and it's not going to look like it does on your TV. So another trick, if you really want to show off that CRT look, you can add scale filters, where you can do a precise scale, type in the exact number. Like here, I've got like a 16K equivalent scale here in OBS where I can really zoom in, and you can actually do, scale filtering. Point is like nearest neighbor, so sharp edges. But if you're doing other things, you might actually want to do like a bilinear filter depending on the nature of the content. And by the way, like something like this, like if you want to record, say, a PS3 or an Xbox 360 or a Wii U game, the 720p, if you set your system to output 720p and you do something like this point filtering, and then you could make like a 4K scale, you can actually do that without something like a RetroTink 4K. You don't need a RetroTink 4K necessarily to record integer scaled HDMI consoles if that's what you're looking to do, you know, something like PS3 or those systems are like that. But yeah, these are the things that float through my brain all the time, and I think too hard about it. I think harder about probably than people that watch it, and if I did it a different way, people would probably not really say anything one way or the other about it, but I'm like obsessed with like doing it like the right way, the way that I want to do it. So anyway, you know, that's kind of the end of what I wanted to.
The whole panel?
No, it's not. I tried to get through that really quickly so that then we can just get to.
Well, let's talk about use cases.
Get to goofing off. So let's.
Yeah, do that dance you like to do.
I like to do a
But
dance.
let's talk about use cases, because like you show off like replication of CRT masks and whatnot. Well, we both make documentaries, and I kind of like to do, you know, pixel perfect showcase with no filtering when you see the actual game.
I agree.
Like John Littman, generally he will just zoom in on an actual PVM and shoot off screen. But I like to do the RetroArch thing where if we zoom in, it's kind of like the effect of going close to the screen, but in video form, that like at that time I didn't apply the CRT maps. So I kind of like to do a hybrid of both.
Right. Like, I mean, the reality is, oftentimes, just because of the reality of time constraints and stuff, I'm just doing what's like, what's up to an acceptable level, but easiest to do with the time I have. You know, if I want, you know, I'm not always going to have time to just, you know, do cutaways where it's got that kind of filter or something like that. You know, like if anyone watches GameSack, you know, he all the time does these fake CRT style filter shots, and he's got you know, he uses Final Cut Pro. You know, he's a Mac guy, so the filters aren't directly compatible that he uses, or I think he created. You know, aren't directly compatible with what we do. But I mean, there's lots of ways to do it. It's nice to kind of mix it up, but you know, I always want to, you know, do things where I want to remind people like this is what it is or this is what it could be. And I understand why a lot of people say like, oh, you shouldn't do RGB. That's not how anyone played it. But I still, again, you know, kind of to go back to this, you know, very first image, you know, you got to keep in mind, people are going to be watching this in an unknowable number of ways. And I think RGB is, or equivalent quality, you know, from an emulator or something like that, is overall the safest way to present that stuff in a way that you know will look good for everyone, right?
Curious, when you started, what did you use to capture? Because like we started.
Funny enough, I was actually talking to someone about this, I was talking to Clint about this yesterday, actually, LGR Clint. Right before going to college, you know, I was interested in video editing. I did video editing stuff in high school. We didn't have like a proper program for it, but I did a lot of like VHS editing. You know, like I was really doing some janky stuff. But I got a computer, you know, with the hope that I could do some video editing stuff on it, and I got an ATI All-in-Wonder card. Anyone with the purple dongle? Woo. Yeah? Yeah, is that a blast from the past? Yeah. I'm pretty sure the first video game that I ever recorded digitally was some scenes from Conker's Bad Fur Day. Because a friend of mine, you know, we were both seniors in high school, and he had to do a school presentation on, you know, an argumentative topic. So, you know, him being a high schooler was, of course, saying, you know, like I want to prove that there's nothing wrong with violence in video games. And so, you know, he wanted footage from, you know, something very violent like Conker's Bad Fur Day. So, yeah, so that was the first of that. But then when I got more into, like in the early streaming days, I was on streaming very early, like back when Twitch TV was Justin TV. Like, I think 2008 was the first stream I did. At first I was kind of just experimenting with, you know, just like pointing a mini DV camera at my HD CRT and streaming it to a friend just for fun. And then we thought we'd try streaming on Justin TV. And anyone ever have a Diamond VC500? Yeah? No? I'm not seeing no one? Well, what about the Pinnacle? The Pinnacle DVD thing? Yeah, that was another, the VC500. That thing's a classic to me. Me and a bunch of my friends had that. The best you could do back then was really S-Video. And I had a really convoluted setup for trying to play like Wii and GameCube and PS3 games through that thing because I wanted to experience 480p, 720p on my TV while still capturing. There was no consumer grade HDMI card at the time, so yeah, it was those S-Video cards. I had to convert like component to VGA and VGA to S-Video to get systems working in 4K on my TV and then ultimately 480i on the capture stream. Of course, at the time I didn't know anything about 240p. I didn't know old games were like 240p. Even as a video guy, I was working professionally in video. I didn't know a lot about that video games had all these weird standards and stuff. So yeah, it was a while before HDMI capture got good. So.
Did I ever tell you the story of my first professional capture from school?
From school.
Okay, so I went to art college, which first of all was a huge mistake. Don't do it.
In Norway, I'm assuming, right?
In Norway, which is also a mistake. Don't go there. And I went to art college, and we had an assignment to do a presentation on noir. And I took my VHS player and S-Video, just like you. I recorded Batman on NES. I went to school and I just put that cassette in. And it was like, here's noir art. And I remember my teacher's look was the same as my dad, just complete shame. I passed the class.
For recording some of my VHS tapes, like me and my friends back in the day, we used to use the Game Boy camera through the Super Nintendo, and we would make like not photos, but we would like you could add like stamps and like text elements and stuff to photos. So I would actually like have like the title of the movie like type on like one by one and like have like full page like story setup and stuff like that made with a Game Boy camera. Later I used Mario Paint and then RPG Maker for PS1 to do our titles for our high school movies. Yeah.
I think Mario Paint was a lot of people's first kind of editing software in that sense. Take a VHS,
in a way,
make animations, and cut them together.
I had a Sony, my first Sony. Anyone have a my first Sony like art tablet? Like I don't know. I never hear anyone talk about them, but it was like I've still got it in the box. It has like an exciting thing in the corner that's like with RF video output. A key feature. So, what are some of your stories, in terms of, getting started with some of the videos you've produced with John?
Well, I was kind of thrown into it by accident because, I guested on a video about Bubsy, which is the greatest game of all. Yeah, a lot of people are.
Bubsy!
It's running on the EVM at our table downstairs right now.
Yes, you can come play it, and I'll play it with you. We also announced the collection. Please buy it. So I was kind of thrown into it by accident, and I had some knowledge. I had a FrameMeister and things like that, but mostly my background was just record on the DVD recordable, and then capture that onto the computer digitally, which was not great. A lot of artifacting, a lot of noise.
Yeah.
So I just remember that John was just kind of well, now do all this and make it an hour long. It's oh God. But John kind of taught me the ropes of that and brought over a ton of equipment, and then with the Tink, it all became easier.
Yeah. Well, that whole point about the DVD burner or DVD recorder is interesting because, same thing with, just recording VHS tapes, right? If you want to represent a VHS tape, maybe you backed that up on a DVD-R years ago. First of all, DVD-Rs, don't last forever. And second of all, you have introduced digital flaws to that VHS image that didn't exist in the original VHS image. You know, very macro blocky. It might have looked okay on a consumer grade CRT back in the day, but you know, you're representing that to, you know, an audience in HD that's watching most likely on an LCD screen of some kind or a phone even, and you know, you can see those artifacts, those flaws so much more. You know, I think a lot about, you know, when people are talking about like, ooh, this is a remaster, but a remaster, remaster means it is a new master copy.
Yeah.
That means that there is nothing missing in this new master copy that would be lost if you lost the original. The original is gone. You don't, you know, you are making everything from this point forward. And back when we had DVD, we probably thought, well, this is as good as it gets.
Yeah,
It's digital, you know, we've copied this, we've preserved these VHS tapes, these analog signals, you know, whether it was recording a game or recording a home movie or whatever, but you've introduced these really bad early digital artifacts to the signal that just don't give a true representation of what that image and that signal was originally like. And so you really gotta then hope, well, okay, now we're in the new era, you know, the RetroTink 4K has a lot of great features for digitizing VHS, so does the 5X actually now. You better hope you have a working VCR and that those tapes are still in good condition, because you could make a new, better master copy if you do it right, but then you really gotta consider, like, okay, like you want to be sure that you're not recording that tape in something that looks like this, where you've got these weird edges. You want to have record more something like this, where the colors kind of blend together along the horizontal axis a bit, but you still want that sharp on the vertical, because that keeps everything kind of within its own scan line. And if something else better came along in the future, it would also be easier with that sharp vertical to resample line by line with something in the future and rescale it again. This would be comparatively much more difficult to fix if you record that in a format that then later becomes outdated. This could be sort of corrected a little more easily.
But the other way to introduce shimmer as well, right?
Well, yes. I mean, of course, this is, so like this here, I mean, you know, to get back to game graphics, like this, again, it's kind of hard for me to tell from this angle if things look, I mean, to y'all, do the pixels look of even size there?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. It's hard to tell from this angle. Some things look a little uneven, but these are wider than tall pixels because it's NES. And we've already reduced shimmer because I didn't bring any examples of non-integer scaling. But if people, you know, watch my show or watch any of my streams, you'll hear me talk about the uneven pixel scaling and the scrolling shimmer, because, you know, the backgrounds kind of stretch and skew as they go over these columns of pixels that are varying sizes. We've already fixed this. It's called bilinear sharp interpolation. Bilinear is not a dirty word.
It's all languages.
It is when you do this. People say, ooh, bilinear filter. That's giving bilinear a bad name. This is also using some bilinear filtering, though, and it looks fantastic. You know, like with this. And in fact, like I say, this is sharp bilinear for Super Nintendo here. Sharp bilinear filtering on the horizontal axis. You add the scan lines, and, you know, it doesn't really feel like a CRT, though, because you've still got that sharp horizontal axis. You want to add a little stronger bilinear filtering, softer bilinear filtering. But this is still sharp bilinear filtering, which in theory could cause issues if you were to resample it later. But you could get around it. But yeah, I mean, again, it depends on how you use it. I mean, I remember, you know, my video professor back in college said, you know, we've got all these rules in video production of how you do it right, but obviously, you know, those rules don't fit every situation, but in order to break the rules, you need to know the rules, because if you break the rules without knowing the rules, you don't have a good reason for breaking the rules, and you won't break the rules well. So, you know, you want to understand, like, okay, how should I do this? How could I do this? And if I want to do it a different way, I want to be, you know, have informed reasons for why I chose a different idea.
We came up with this panel on last minute call.
I mean, if anyone wants to ask us questions to just kind of move the conversation along, yeah, go for it.
Just to continue on the topic of, because obviously you guys are addressing CRTs and scan lines and all that, but there's obviously games on little LCD guys and have their own little filters that you can apply to them. So how would you apply that to say Game Boy, or would you attack say 480p PS3 game with an LCD filter? How would you do that?
I mean, I like LCD. LCD filters can work decently on YouTube. I don't know if you watch GameSack, but a lot of more recent GameSack videos that have featured Game Boy Color games actually have used sub-pixel RGB grids, and it works pretty well. It doesn't compress that badly. That kind of thing can compress poorly on YouTube, but it doesn't work that badly. Something like this though, like if you tried to present the whole game like that with those really fine CRT sub-pixel RGB elements, that would be a lot more problematic on YouTube, even if you brighten it up like that. For Game Boy though, I mean, Game Boy is an example of something that does use square pixels. Other examples of things that use square pixels or close enough to square pixels, other than modern stuff, of course, which is all square pixels, would be N64 and Neo Geo. Like technically, there's some fraction of a fraction off of square for N64 and Neo Geo, but it's close enough that if you want to just get sharp, hard-edged scaling with no interpolation for Neo Geo and N64, that's generally fine. Of course, N64 can run a few resolutions, but generally 320 wide with square pixels. But then don't forget, there's also other LCD-based systems like Game Gear. And I forget if the Lynx is this way or not, but Game Gear actually runs with wide pixels. It does not conform to a fixed dot matrix style grid like Game Boy games do. So that's an example of one that is too skinny if it's that way. But yeah, as far as filters go, I love filters. I kind of chickened out. I did a Game Boy video recently, and I made my own custom color palette. I actually have my phone background is actually I made these Game Boy 4 Game Boy shades. I just thought that'd be a fun phone background. I don't know. Anyway, I designed that, and I'm looking at my actual Game Boy under different lighting conditions, and I settled on I like this DMG style palette, and I put it on Mister, and I used that as the basis for the DMG style footage. But I didn't use a grid. I thought about because the RetroTink 5X has actually gotten some features recently that makes it easier to create that dot matrix style effect. I thought about it, but ultimately I just kind of chickened out of doing the separated grid elements, and just went with the color scheme. I think it would work okay on YouTube to have the grid, but I still thought just the colors, that's what appeals to me. I don't really like pure black and white for Game Boy games that much. I like to have some sort of interpretation of the screen colors, or a Super Game Boy style color palette or something like that. But I don't know if that gets to anything you asked or not, but
Yeah, close enough.
yeah. Over here?
Yeah, you mentioned like the Justin TV days when you were just learning to capture and stream and everything. You didn't even know what 240p was. So
No.
what led to discovering that? Was it the retro RGB thing that Bob started, or something else?
Well, there was the first thing. I forget exactly when I discovered retro RGB. It was probably all kind of in the same time. There was there still is, I believe, a website called Hazard City. .de is a German website run by this guy, and he had a review of the Framemeister and all these other scalers. They were really designed for video files, for home cinema projector setups and stuff like that. They're really designed for scaling movie content, laser discs and stuff like that. But you were able to tune it to get pretty decent results from video games. There were usually more things like line doublers rather than full-on scalers. And of Corey and I were looking at the FrameMeister review he did, and we're just like, what? Like, how? No, the best you can get out of this is S-Video, and it doesn't look as good. No, and so we didn't know that, retro consoles are outputting signals like this and things like that. So yeah, it kind of just started with like Corey taking that first step of like buying a FrameMeister because we're like, ooh, this is a lot of money. And he got the courage to pull the trigger on it first and bought the FrameMeister. And then he sent me screenshots of what he's getting with, he bought SCART cables, and we started learning about, okay, these old games actually run this low-res progressive resolution, and so I got the FrameMeister, and it's just like, wow, like I've been preaching the good word of S-Video for years and years and years, but I mean, you're from Europe, so you knew about SCART.
Yeah, because I've been importing in PAL and SCART, so I had that. But my first run-in with like actual resolutions and output was, I was working in Japan with PC98 software, because I was doing preservation for magazines and exhibitions and re-releases. There's something called Project Egg. I don't know if anyone. Okay. And in that case, like, we were working on it, and I was getting really annoyed because all these Japanese guys, engineers I was working with, was just putting out software that was incorrectly being output. I was like, it doesn't look right. And they're like, what do you mean? It's like, well, look at the screen. Like, it's all off. It's like, the pixels are off. Like, no, no one will notice. It's like, I just noticed. I told you. So it kind of became my job at that time to just kind of like figure out, because the PS98 used different resolutions based on games, also PC88 software, things like that. So I was pretty familiar with that, just through working on actual software and software releases. Because basically I come from a developer background and came into YouTube by accident, like I said. So I've been applying that back, but I mean, obviously you learned through it through video production.
Yeah, well, I mean, and you say about like, oh, people are like, oh, no one will notice,
Oh, you still hear that. You still hear that.
Well, I mean, that's what I was going to say. Like, a whole lot of retro collections. It's on the whole getting better, but a lot of times, like, people working on this stuff don't see these issues, or they don't. They they're kind of just assigned to the project, and retro gaming, retro pixels might not be their background necessarily, and so there's so many circumstances that lead to sometimes these things not being done correctly, even in an officially released product.
Last year I was developing a game for a large developer. I can't say who it is because I still work with them, but I was doing a retro release. So if you look at my Molby games, you'll figure it out and tell them. But like, they came to me because, like you say, like you were talking about like DMG, like dot matrix shaders and stuff, and I sit there obsessively in software trying to like do the mathematics to figure out how to do this properly. And we were working on dot matrix for a Game Boy game. So I narrowed down that list pretty well for you, right?
Yeah, we could all figure it out. What it is
Yeah. And this large developer came back, because it was their game from back in the 90s. And they came back with feedback from me. He's like, oh, you're making the game look old. And it's a retro release. It's called a retro collection at the title. So even then you get kind of like that kind of feedback. They're just like, well, we don't want it to look old.
Well, I mean, you've told the story about when you and John went to E3 and Grandia HD was shown off.
Yes.
And, does everyone here know what Grandia HD looks like? Yeah, it looks like that.
Those people.
It looks like that, right? It looks like...
This isn't being recorded,
They
right?
would use Saturn base, but no, they use PS1.
Yeah, right, but even beyond that, it does have this blurry...
Vaseline.
Yeah, it's smeared all over. Well, you told me that, and of course, I don't know if these were the actual developers or just the reps
They
from...
were the actual developers.
Yeah, so you and John were talking to them, and
we asked a very simple question. Oh, can we turn off that filter? No. Is that okay? I was like, yeah. Yeah, sure.
yeah, well...
Then we left the meeting.
Well, and apparently, I believe what John told me was, they said, oh, it's like, well, guys, it should look like that.
Yeah.
Not like that, or at least have an option to make it look like that. And they're like, oh, but then it wouldn't be HD. This is HD.
John showed him a screenshot from like the Saturn on his phone, and I just remember the guy didn't look at his phone; he just looked straight at John. I was like, okay. I don't want to hear it. This has nothing to do with our video production.
Well, but it's all related to, how these games should be presented, whether it is in a released game product or whether it's in a YouTube product. I think it's important to keep in mind and think about these things about, how do we want to represent these games? There's a lot of potential correct ways to do it. I think this is just as correct as this. I think this is not ideal. I think this is not ideal. But these two, those are both very valid,
So, yeah, let me pivot this talk then into another story of mine. I tell a lot of stories, but we're talking about release software, and I was proudly the director on Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, the remastered edition. Did I buy that?
Yeah.
No? Yeah.
I regrettably held it.
You're in the game.
There is
Your
a
face is in it.
there's
I
a
sent it to your mom.
there is a credits photo of me eating fried chicken.
Wait,
That's right. Bring it full circle.
were you wearing a tie?
Was it
I was not
filters over it like in the intro?
Oh, that was the new intro you're talking about? Like the video intro?
I've actually never seen it, but I know that in the beginning of the
Or so
game,
it's
there was
like
like
the
the weird
hamster
filtered images in the beginning that just
Yeah.
Oh.
So the thing was Limited Run, wonderful employer, please make sure that you note this. I was hired in specifically because of my love for bad games and stuff from Digital Foundry. They were like, hey, we want to hire you for a project. It's like, all right, what is it? Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. Like, oh. And my first day at the job was basically like, well, you're the director of Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, remastered edition, or definitive edition, I think it was renamed eventually. Oh, it's important to
I remember there was a moment, because we shot interview materials for the game to give it some context.
Yeah.
And I live not that far from Limited Run, so you hired me freelance to go shoot all these interviews, and I remember there was just this moment where you were just staring into space, and that was when you realized but you were just this was different than usual. You were staring in space in this way of what have I gotten myself into? How am I going to get this done?
That's why I realized why my dad was disappointed. So Limited Run had actually announced the game a year before I joined. They hadn't started developing it though, but they had announced it coming. And with that announcement also announced features, among which was it's going to be in 4K. So my first day at the job, I was like, oh, that's interesting. We have the source material, we have the original images. They're like, no. I was like, oh, so we had a video then, so I can capture it again? They're like, no, we don't have anything. I was like, well, why did you say it's going to be in 4K? It's like, well, it's not a 4K machine. I'm like, well, this is bad. I need to figure out what to do here. So I figured, well, it's a short game, it can't be that bad, right? The game has 891 still images. And they were like, well, you worked in Japan and you were doing AI stuff, because I did develop some AI routines for upscaling anime in Japan.
Which upscales very cleanly because of the nature of the artwork.
Black lines, easy shading, nothing like real people. So I tried to explain, yeah, I can't really do anything with that knowledge. They're like, sure you can, just do it. So I tried a few things. But wasn't happy. Everything came out like chicken skin. Chicken skinny, kind of plasticky. You've seen AI upscaling for photos, and I was like, I can't use this. This is terrible. So I developed a brand new AI routine specifically to recognize humans, real photos. And then I asked the actors in the game, who are luckily still alive, can I get all these photos of you, preferably as unclothed as possible? Both of you, to send me images to train this AI. So I put them to train for each actor separately. So I had 3 models, AI models. I had one for the background and one for each of the main actors. I then had to generate an AI upscale of each of the 891 images for each model. That's 3 times. Then I had to take each image and composite them together and look at the results and kind of mix and match. Then I have to hand edit all of that by hand. Obviously, hand edited means by hand. So it's a bit redundant, but for each of those, we're up in thousands of images where plumbers don't wear ties.
But then beyond that, at the end of the process, you were like, something still feels a little off, and
Yes.
you scanned your own home
Well, that was
photos
after, yes, so.
to get the natural look of a old, you know.
You're skipping a whole year.
Well, we don't have much time left, so I'm trying to skip a whole year.
We're trying to have the palace it is.
So, you know, but I wanted to say that you did a good job, because I was saying earlier that, you know, I'm kind of picky about, I think the term remaster is overused, because it introduces new problems to older content that oftentimes that, you know, something's broken in the new version of a game, something's broken in the new version of a movie. But without having access to the source images, which will never happen, we'll never be able to get that. But you created something new that is I would say a replacement for those originals in a way that feels like, you know, real photograph scans.
Yeah, because you were talking about me looking into space.
Yes.
And that was due to the fact that I looked back after I was done with the whole job, and I wasn't happy, so I deleted all of it. And I started over, doing it again with a more improved code. And then, like you mentioned, I was still not happy, but I spent 2 years now upscaling these goddamn images for this fucking game. And I was like, well, something's still missing. And I scanned my own family albums, kind of zooming in, trying to figure out what is it about these images that make them, you know, Kodak moments, memories I'll never forget. How can I make plumbers unforgettable? And I figured out that it's kind of like a noise pattern, more like in the images, a warmth to them. So I developed another routine, software that could analyze the color hue and color codes of the image and then apply a new hue and a filter, a noise filter on top of that, and some bilinear sharp blurring to that, so that it would all blend together.
So I mean, you oftentimes, you know, like I said, these techniques, you know, in isolation, you know, can be bad, but if you combine them all in the right ways, you know, you just kind of got not like stop halfway and say, oh, it's retro and it's HD. No, there's a few more steps to the process. Sometimes processes that can take
3 years.
Yeah, 3 years. So there were a few questions in the back. Anyone? Was there anyone in the back that had anything? Yeah.
At some point in the future, I was planning on making a video about the original Mega Man X. And just because, compared to using either the GameCube or PS4 collections, it'd be easier to just record the footage through an emulator and get it through that. So recording it through the emulator, I'd have perfectly sharp native resolution, but it would be the narrower aspect ratio.
Right.
So what do you think the best way would be to get it, once the video is already made, to get it to the proper aspect ratio?
So would this be recorded like 1:1 pixels, or would it already be scaled like, you know, like 4x or something?
Emulators usually have a native record option.
Yeah.
It's just, it'd be the exact.
You know, the right person to ask about that might be more Bob than me, because he's done a lot more. You know, Bob, Retro RGB Bob. He's on the same row of tables that we are downstairs. He's got Panel 5 actually that we're going to try to crash and be on. He's done a lot more than I have in terms of recording like native resolution, uncompressed quality. Of course, that might take up a lot of hard drive space. Even those small 1:1 pixels would take a lot. There is something though in, you can get I think it's like aescripts.com. There's a free plugin you can get for Adobe Premiere called Visualize Pixel Perfect. It's actually got like Mario and Luigi like GBA sprites. It's actually heavier than you would think it would be, but you can use that to do nearest neighbor scaling. And then what I would recommend doing, and actually something that you can see on here, maybe, I might not have one on here, but what I actually did in OBS for some of this scaling, zooming in and scaling stuff, I also did things where I could do an integer scale to a certain size and would, you know, go in all directions, but with a point filter, like is listed there, And then I would do a second one that wouldn't rescale the vertical, only rescale the horizontal. And I would give it a bilinear filter. And then that way, vertical perfectly sharp, you know, for stage 1 of the scale, it would be 2 separate filters. And then the second one just corrects the horizontal with a bilinear filter, which again, you know, things like that is also a bilinear filter, but it's just a sharp bilinear filter. And that keeps, you know, things from being uneven. But depending on, I mean, you know, with emulators, you can do lots of filters and stuff with emulation. You can do, you could with an emulator, if you configure it correctly, you could get it scaled correctly from the beginning of your recording. I don't think that's necessarily something you would have to do after the fact. I would try to record that pre-scaled with non-square pixels using, I'm not that experienced in digging around in the RetroArch options, but I know there are interpolation filters to get, you know, a result similar to that, or similar to, I mean, you know, to go to Super Nintendo, you know, something similar to one of these, which is the correct aspect ratio with bilinear sharp filtering on the horizontal axis. You can definitely do that with RetroArch shaders and some of the settings. You can definitely get that look from the get-go without the need to do it after the fact. But there could be a number of ways you could correct it. I mean, I actually do it all the time where I have footage that isn't the correct aspect ratio and I want to, you know, I just do some adjustment in Premiere, but it's usually already scaled up big like this, and I'm just making a small horizontal adjustment.
Okay, sorry, we're pretty much out of time.
We're out of time.
You're
so-
welcome to use the hall or invite everyone to your booth.
Yeah, so that will do it.